it's very old-fashioned, and you have people that are looking to find anything you want to do, but it is personalized.
Yeah, so the Safeway has this New For You site, which actually takes your personalized data, takes your shopping history data, and gives you deals. The problem is it's not nuanced enough. So it kind of understands, sort of, it infers some demographics where I have kids as I buy, certain things. And it kind of just slams it against it. It's not nearly as nuanced. And I think, again, it's because of the analytics aren't necessarily there for them to be able to crunch these things at scale. So I think one of the, but I just love the fact that they're trying something. Right. And I really applaud them for trying something, because they'll learn. Because they put these deals, and people click on it, they don't, gee, that's not a good recommendation. And build a recommendation, I don't know how many of you have built recommendation engines before, they're really hard. But the amount of data that they have is just tremendous that they can do it. So I think the key thing for that is really working with people like Catalina, who actually do all those coupons that spit out all that junk and stuff, and actually say, a very simple thing, put that ahead of time, and then have it with my loyalty, because I don't have to take any paper with me anymore. If I just buy it, I just get it.
Hi, Charlene. I'm Casey. Two questions. The first one is, what are some companies that in your mind are some of the best ones in using social media with their customers? And the second one is, there's so many of the lookalike, like social.
Living Social, yeah.
Living Social, which is the one that made a huge splash in recent days, actually, and Amazon, and Google apparently is doing something, and so many of the other Travel Zoo, I guess, is another one. What do you think about those, and if you try them, and what are your thoughts about them?
So let me talk about the Groupon phenomenon. My inbox, my personal email is flooded with these things. I love them. And I'm buying way too many of these things. So when they all came out, I keep signing. And it's just gotten to the point where my husband's like, you gotta stop. Right? And I've got a river rafting trip, customized chains, it just goes on and on. I even got like a cashmere travel pillow because I travel so much. So, but the funny thing is, I can't use any of the clothing sites because I'm a petite. They don't have petites. And I have wide feet, so I can't buy any shoes. So it's kind of interesting. So I think we're still a long ways away from these things, and I think the segmentation of these things. What I think is going to be very interesting is I want to say it's REI, but it's not REI. I think it's J. Crew actually has these sort of flash sales now that goes on all weekend long. So sort of the Dell Outlet and all these people like that doing flash sales with brands that I actually know and love. So I love Ann Taylor clothes. They actually fit me really. I think I'm wearing all Ann Taylor today. And it's great because if they could do a flash sale on Ann Taylor for me, I would just be on there all the time. And I wouldn't use guilt. So I think this is about building loyalty and about curation. I mean, Rue La La is one of my favorite sites. They do a fantastic job of curation, but I can't buy most of their stuff because it doesn't fit me, not even close. So it's great for discovery. It's great for me and me expanding my repertoire of what's fashionable, what's not. And it's great to see what my friends like and also things. The other question you had was who's doing this well? Who's doing social well? I mean, there are so many good companies. You got the usual suspects like Dell and Best Buy and Starbucks. I'll tell you one of my favorite examples is a company called Infor. Technology, B2B, enterprise apps. They and Intuit recently did something internally with social media, which is interesting. They both put in place ways so that people could get more involved internally as employees across the entire organization. So most of you are using social media or something as a marketing department, but think about what would happen if you could be like Best Buy and you could get everybody in your organization to use social media, the level of engagement that you could have. So I think the real opportunity here is to take the goodness that you know and the relationships that you form from a marketing perspective with the customers and put that in the hands of every single one of your employees. So Intuit, what they did is they get 85% of their employees every month to go onto their customer support site, the forums, and answer questions. 100% of their managers and 85% of all employees. And the reason being isn't because they needed more people to answer questions. I mean, that always helps. but it was more than anything else to make sure that every employee could hear the pain point of a customer at least once a month. And how important is that? If everybody could hear what a customer says, they're going to be that much more tuned to making sure that they're meeting those customer needs in everyday work of their lives. And so I think that's the real potential behind social media. It isn't about, using Facebook or about Twitter. It's about the relationship. And it's what I write about in both of my books. It's about the relationship and how can you make it to the point to where it really brings it to a higher level beyond just transactions. And who owns the relationship inside your company with your customers? No one does, and everyone does. So it's the same thing with social media. Think about how it can become a much more holistic exercise than just some type of marketing program. Yeah.
From a consumer perspective, one of the obvious kind of hurdles that all of this faces is the concern for privacy, and that's been written about ad nauseum. Do you see any other kind of hurdles or speed bumps along the way? Because it feels like every year there's 20 more things that are giving us more information and more ways that we can be engaged. Do you see a backlash happening? Like, it's a very micro example. My sister recently pulled herself off Facebook, at least temporarily, because she felt some things had happened that she felt like, wow, I'm too out there and I'm seeing too many things that I don't need to see, and I just need to step away from it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any trends like that, but is there anything else that you see as kind of hurdles?
I think the whole idea of privacy is not so much about, because we got all the issues around what do you have rights for, and I think usually the privacy issues work themselves out amazingly. It's like, gee, tracking cookies. Well, all of the browsers are putting tracking controls now on them. So problem solved, right? So the industry tends to self-regulate itself because nobody wants to mess that up. What I find very interesting, though, is that there's a mind shift happening here about what is private anymore. And that when you're finally realizing, I use Google Voice, where all the conversations could potentially be recorded on this. I can OCR and voice recognize everything out. And so nothing is private unless I keep it in my head. So if you play this all the way down, could we actually be sharing less in a sharing culture because we know what will be public or not? So that's one of the social, societal things that I deal with all the time, and especially as somebody who lives a fairly public life, you guys have no idea what my kids' names are because I've never published it, and I never will. At least until they get their own Facebook account. And then, at that point, that changes a lot of things because I never talk about their names. So it's kind of interesting in terms of what we will be private about and those walls, how they shift and grow. And I think people are already started saying, there were just certain things I just won't put up on Facebook like your friend. But I think, though, that the trend of sharing is here to stay. There's no reversing it. Your friend will probably go back onto Facebook at some point, your sister. Because all her friends are there, and that's how you stay connected with everybody. But she may be much more guarded in terms of what she will actually do on that side because of her experiences with it. I also think that Facebook has one fundamental problem in that, as I don't know how many of you guys have friends, but there is this, very few people limit how many friends. It's an ever-expanding platform, and it's very hard to do friend management. I've talked about this for years now. Friend management is a nightmare across the board. And trying to figure out mentally, where do I connect with a friend? Do I DM them? Do I call them? Do I Skype them? Is really hard to keep track of. Even inside of my own company, how do I find Jeremiah? Is he on Skype today? Is he on Google Chat? Do I DM him? Do I mobile him? I don't know how to find him. So it's kind of like trying to find this thing, this moving target. Oh, how do I communicate with people? It used to be pretty straightforward. It's not anymore. Yeah, in the back here.
What do you think of that website called Path, which is like the anti-Facebook kind of?
I love it. It almost made it on my list. It's called Path, and it's a private social network. You can only have up to 50 friends in it. Total, anti-social network in some ways, right? But I think it's beautiful because it says within this small group of people, it's my inner circle of people and friends that I'm going to invite into this space. I find it really interesting because there were some other ones that were in the past, like family.com and some other places, that never really quite took off because again, they came out at a time when you had this whole Facebook thing. I think the beautiful thing about Path is that it's not only private, but it's limited to just 50 people. And so therefore, you know that the ties were extremely strong. I think that the judgment on that is out still, because I think the biggest issue around that is what is the business model going to be? Because the whole idea, all of these sites, is really around being social, and I think they actually have a paid model. So it'll be interesting to see how they actually make that work. I'm watching it very carefully, and I've actually joined it too as well, because that's my survival mechanism for my 5,000 friends on Facebook. Right.
One more question?
Yeah.
So I have to ask, are we in a bubble, and what does that mean?
Oh, I think we are headed right into a bubble. I absolutely do. I've seen this replayed itself out over and over and over again. Just look at all the Groupon spin-offs, and that says something to you. I think that, but I don't think that Facebook is overvalued. So people ask me this. No, I did the whole thing with the Google IPO. Was it overvalued? I'm like, no, not even close. You look at the value. You look at right now that the revenues per user is about $300 a person. That's totally reasonable in terms of the users that they have. So from any media evaluations, absolutely in the ballpark of things. So that said, what I think is going to happen is, I don't think we're quite there yet, but the enthusiasm that the IPO is going to create is, again, I think a whole series of bad funding decisions by VCs into all these companies that are features and not true disruption. So that's why I keep going back to what is truly disruptive, where you should be funding, either as VCs, entrepreneurs, or as businesses, and where you should be investing. Just think about what is fundamentally disruptive about these things. And if it's not going to be disruptive, then don't bother. Because you got better things to do, especially with limited resources, limited time, limited people. What are you going to focus on? I would love to hear back again if you have suggestions on the model, other things I should be looking at. Again, this is all brand new stuff, so thank you very much for your patience.